Welcome to This Explainer. Today we're diving straight into how ancient Islamic traditions offer some seriously practical frameworks for discipline, articulate expression, and just finding some peace in our modern daily lives. We often think of ancient religious texts purely in terms of theology, right? But when we look a little closer at the practices surrounding them, we actually find a deeply structured, brilliant system for human behavior.
So let's start with a highly relatable human experience. Have you ever deeply regretted words spoken in the heat of the moment? Of course you have. I have. We all have. It's a completely universal struggle. So today, we're going to see how a highly structured spiritual journey addresses this exact problem, step by step. We're going to start from the very way we physically form words in our mouths, all the way to how we actually structure our entire days.
Okay, here's our roadmap for today. First, the art of Tajweed. Second, seeking spiritual protection. Third, managing the fire within. And fourth, daily spiritual anchors. So jumping right into number 1, the art of Tajweed, or the mechanics of sacred speech. We begin our journey with the external discipline of the voice. Now you might be wondering, what exactly is Tajweed? Well, it's definitely not just about basic grammar or knowing how to read a language. It is a meticulous, highly specific vocal discipline designed to properly honor divine words. In Islamic jurisprudence, it's actually considered one of the most honorable disciplines out there, simply because it demands your total presence and complete physical control to ensure the text is recited flawlessly.
And this is where it gets absolutely fascinating. This physical mouth placement actually alters the spiritual weight and the meaning of the words being spoken. Tajweed categorizes letters into heavy, known as tafkhim, and light, known as tarqiq. So for heavy letters like ta or qaf, your tongue physically elevates to the roof of your mouth, creating this echoing, heavier sound. But for light letters, the tongue just rests at the bottom. This physical act of consciously placing your tongue, it literally bridges the gap between your physical body and the spiritual intention behind the words.
There are tons of rules, but just look at the sheer specificity required here. You have qalqala, which demands a specific echoing sound. Khuna requires this precise 2-beat nasal sound. And Makharij al-huruf, that demands knowing the exact anatomical points of articulation in your throat and your mouth. By mastering these rules, a practitioner takes esoteric religious devotion and grounds it directly into human anatomy. It forces you to slow down, be completely present, and take absolute responsibility for every single syllable that leaves your lips.
Okay, let's move on to number 2, seeking spiritual protection, the shield of the mind. Now that we understand the physical mechanics of speaking sacred words, how are specific words used to protect the mind?
This short, incredibly powerful phrase right here acts as a psychological and spiritual reset button. It translates to, "I seek refuge with Allah from the accursed devil." In the Islamic tradition, you use this phrase as a direct intervention. You're actively seeking divine protection from negative influences, known as ash-shaytan, who try to lead people astray through whispers and random temptations.
And as you can see, this phrase is incredibly versatile. Yes, it's used before reading the Quran to help maintain focus, but it's also for the everyday, visceral challenges we all face. Feeling a sudden, crazy spike of anger, experiencing a wave of anxiety, or maybe some negative, sinful thoughts popping into your head. You deploy this phrase immediately to block them. It's essentially a habit of mindfulness that instantly shifts your focus away from whatever triggered you and points it toward a higher power for protection.
Now, here's a really interesting detail. Within formal prayer, the Sunnah, which is the prophetic tradition, only requires you to say it once, right at the very beginning of the first prayer cycle. You don't have to keep repeating it while you're worshiping, but out in daily life, it's an ever-present, constant tool that practitioners keep right in their back pocket to maintain their spiritual and emotional equilibrium whenever life inevitably throws them off balance.
Which brings us perfectly to number 3, managing the fire within, extinguishing the fire. Let's see how this all builds into tackling the intense challenge of human anger.
This is such a powerful metaphor from the prophetic tradition because it visually transforms the abstract feeling of anger into a literal fire. The logic here is just beautifully straightforward. Anger is a temptation from Satan, Satan is made of fire, and, well, how do you put out a fire? With water. So this requires a physical intervention, performing ablution or washing with water to extinguish an emotional blaze. It brilliantly connects a psychological state directly to a physical remedy.
So if we look at the steps, the Prophet Muhammad basically provided a highly practical, psychological, and physical toolkit to manage our emotional outbursts. First, recognize the spiritual threat and say that reset phrase, Audhubillah. Second,
Immediately change your physical state. Standing up, sit down. Already sitting, lie down. It snaps you into awareness of your body. Third, enforce the ultimate vocal discipline, total silence. Do not let the fire speak. And finally, if you're still fuming, get up and wash yourself with water. It's just a phenomenal system for de-escalation.
And let me tell you, the stakes for maintaining this discipline are immense. Controlling our anger isn't just about, preserving our worldly relationships or avoiding a shouting match at the grocery store. These traditions highlight that mastering yourself in moments of total fury can actually protect you from divine punishment, making it a direct pathway to paradise. So, the spiritual and the practical, they are completely intertwined here.
Finally, let's look at number 4, daily spiritual anchors, anchoring the routine. How do practitioners actually maintain this incredible level of vocal and emotional discipline every single day without just burning out?
Well, they do it through heavily structured routines, like the Wazifa Zarruqiyya. Now, a wazifa is a regular litany, basically a prescribed set of prayers and recitations. This particular one was compiled by the 15th century Sufi scholar Ahmad Zarruq. He actually introduced it as the ship of salvation for those who resort to God. It takes all these components from earlier scholars and packages them into a highly structured, repeatable daily routine.
The real secret power of the wazifa lies in its rhythm. By anchoring the day at 2 specific times, once in the morning after the Fajr prayer and once in the late afternoon after the Asr prayer, the practitioner guarantees that their spiritual discipline stays constant. It perfectly bookends the waking day with intentionality, whether you're reciting it alone in your room or together with your community.
And notice how the wazifa weaves together absolutely everything we've talked about today. Just look at the sequence. It starts by seeking refuge, deploying that mental shield. Then, it moves right into specific verses of the Quran, requiring the physical vocal discipline and presence of Tajweed. It pulls in the throne verse and prophetic prayers for well-being. It is quite literally a daily conditioning exercise for the soul, getting the practitioner ready to face the fires and the frustrations of the day with absolute grace.
As we wrap up this explainer, I really want to leave you with this thought. We've seen how precise tongue placement honors sacred words. We've seen how a simple, single phrase acts as a psychological shield, and how water and silence can literally extinguish rage. So whether you are practicing Muslim or you're just someone seeking a bit of self-improvement and peace in your life, how might adopting these tools for sacred discipline extinguish the fires in your own daily routine? Think about it. How might applying just a little bit of this ancient structure help you navigate the chaos of our modern world?